Welcome to another FPL video. Today we're covering the best team for Game Week 20 as things stand, and once we have FA Cup games happen and we have more information, I'll be uploading more videos such as the team selection, also the best wildcard team, and much more headed your way. Be sure to tune in for the reaction stream as well as the upcoming deadline stream. There's a lot more to come on this channel. The same goes for UCL fantasy content next month in February when the Champions League returns. So if you end up enjoying this video, you know what to do. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new, and also check us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/DylanRCM, and you can also become a channel member, and both of those, whether you become a patron or a channel member, you will get early access to videos and much more, so be sure to check that out. And let's just get straight into this video. I think there are 5 goalkeepers that are worth mentioning this week. The 2 double game week ones are obviously the standouts in Hugo Lloris and more importantly Ederson, especially if you don't know which Man City defender to go for because of their playing time. So Ederson is just a safe way into that defence. But from the single game week options, I would go for either Raya, Kepa Arrizabalaga, or Nick Pope, and we've already gone for a triple up in Newcastle in the outfield position, so that's why we haven't gone for Nick Pope. And Raya is actually significantly cheaper, and he can get a lot of saves and bonus points, and I think that Brentford will keep a clean sheet against Bournemouth. As for Kepa, despite Chelsea's woes, I think they will keep a clean sheet against Crystal Palace, or at least they have a good chance of doing that. So it's between those 5 goalkeepers. Let me know your pick down in the comment section below, but I've gone for Raya, and I don't really like the Brentford defenders per se, even though Ben Mee has been decent. I would just go for Raya and cover Chelsea and all these other defences, especially Man City and Spurs, in other ways, and that's mainly through their defenders. One of the biggest questions this week is which Man City defender should I go for, and there are so many doubts surrounding all these options, and that's why I said you could just go for Ederson and save yourself a headache. But from the defender specifically, I think Akanji is still the most nailed. He came on at half-time for Joao Cancelo against Chelsea, but in every other game since Game Week 9, he started every single game in the Premier League, and I think Akanji is the most nailed. You could also point towards Ake at the moment, but a kind of pattern that has emerged this season is that after every 3, 4 or 5 games in the Premier League, he would then be dropped like he was against Brentford just before the break and we went off to the World Cup. So I would go for Akanji if you really want a Man City defender, and if not, I just go for Ederson. Joao Cancelo is far too much money. I don't know what's happened to him really. He got dropped from the Portugal squad in the World Cup, and also in the Premier League he's been dropped from the Man City squad as well. He didn't even play in the Carabao Cup as well. So that has been very strange to say the least. And to spend over 7 million on a defender who may not even start one of the 2 games across the double, I just don't think it's worth it. Next up, we have Ivan Perisic, and I still think Spurs aren't a great defence despite their great performance against Crystal Palace. But Perisic has a double game week. He's got attacking potential. He's got 5 assists now this season, and he is definitely the best option that they have to offer. Christian Romero is back. The same goes for Hugo Lloris, and I think Spurs could keep a clean sheet actually in one of the games in the double. Even though they're facing the 2 best teams in the country right now, I still think Spurs could maybe keep a clean sheet, especially in that North London derby where I think Spurs will give absolutely everything to stop the Gunners. So I would go for Perisic personally on a free hit. Would I buy him with my normal team and try to have him for the long term? I probably wouldn't, but for the double game week, I think Perisic is a really good option on paper. Bueno is here just really as a budget enabler. The same goes for Ward in goal. Then we look at the 2 Newcastle defenders. Trippier has to be in the team against Fulham, and Trippier is the best defender period. We've covered this before. He got an 8-pointer against Arsenal. He even scored a goal against Man City, another of the top teams in the country, and he just constantly delivers no matter who the opposition is in front of him. And the other defender is Botman. How he is 4.4 million still, I will never know. He's one of the highest scoring defenders. I think he's 6th overall, and he's actually gone down from his original value of 4.5 million at the beginning of the season. He is an absolute bargain. He is the best defender at that price and below, so don't be too put off going for double up in Newcastle defensively. At the moment, they have the best defence in the country, and they've only conceded 11 goals. Nick Pope, for example, has kept 10 clean sheets, which is an absolutely insane figure, and I think Newcastle just offers so much value in all areas of the pitch, but particularly in the defence. This is where things get very interesting, and I've gone for De Bruyne despite the fact that he hasn't returned in the Premier League since returning from the World Cup. However, he has been exceptional. He was man of the match against Chelsea, and he also was incredible against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup. And the other performances, like the one against Leeds, he should have had 2 or 3 assists on that day. And I think the returns will come in this double game week against Man United and Tottenham. And even beyond that, I think De Bruyne is a good option. But when we're looking beyond game week 20, would you rather have De Bruyne or Odegaard, who has scored more points and is around 6 million cheaper? cheaper, or you'd go for Odegaard. But for this game week specifically, I would go for Kevin De Bruyne, and he is my favourite Man City attacker besides Haaland, of course. However, another one to consider is Riyad Mahrez, who has returned in his last 3 games, even coming off the bench against Chelsea. He was the one who made the difference, him and Grealish combining, and that just shows how much depth Man City have in these attacking positions. And Mahrez tends to do really well in the second half of the season, so he is another one to consider if you want a differential for sure. And you can even captain him if you're feeling really brave, but I would probably just go for one of the 2 big men up front, and we'll talk about them later on. But Kevin De Bruyne would be my preference to cover Man City in the midfield. Then we've gone for Kulusevski, who is still an injury doubt, but I would expect him to be back and available and into the starting 11 against Arsenal, and he should also play against Man City, and he is definitely the best way to cover Spurs offensively besides Harry Kane. Heung-min Son obviously scored against Crystal Palace, and he's another one to consider, but Son has been far too inconsistent this season, and I would just rather go for Kulusevski, who is significantly cheaper, and I think he's also a better FPL option at this moment in time. Then when we look at the rest of the midfield, it gets very strange because you'd probably have to bench 2 of these options depending on how you want to set up. And I'll be talking about the lineup going into Game Week 20 with this free hit team. Rashford you could feasibly start. I could see him getting a return against Man City, but other options would include Martinelli, Odegaard around a similar price. And also you could go to a really cheap option like Mitoma. I have a good feeling about him against Liverpool. I think he could cause absolute havoc, just like Trossard did in the reverse fixture in Anfield. So maybe Rashford is going to be a bit of an interesting one because you wouldn't want to bench him if you go for him, but I still think he's a great option this week and he's worth highlighting, but he might not make the starting 11 of this team. Jensen's another one who faces Bournemouth. I think he could be a pretty decent option. I would rather have him over Andres Pereira this week as a budget choice, but at the same time, you're probably going to bench him anyway, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. And if you can't afford this team, then one thing you could do is just go from Jensen to a cheaper midfielder, such as Andreas Pereira, or perhaps go even cheaper as a result. Almiron will be starting, that's for sure, against Fulham. And this triple up in Newcastle, I think, is the way to go. And obviously, we'll talk about this very soon. You'll see how everything mixes together. But Almiron, I think you just can't drop him when he's facing Fulham. He's blanked in the last 2 games. I would expect him to get back to scoring ways against Fulham. And I just think he's a fantastic option. I never expected him to be this good. And you might be tempted by Callum Wilson or another Newcastle attacker like, say, Maximan if he gets back into the starting 11. But I think Almiron is by far the best. 2 of these 3 forwards are absolutely locked in and they're going to be facing each other for the captaincy. If you want a differential and a way of climbing the ranks and going against the Haaland captaincy, then going for Harry Kane, putting the armband on him could be the way forwards, and I think he could deliver for you. He always does the business against Arsenal in the North London derby, in home matches in particular, and he also has done it before against Man City at the Etihad. Just look at last season, for example. I could see him scoring 2 or 3 across these 2 games, despite the difficulty of the opposition. Haaland needs no introduction. You could just go for the captaincy on him, or even the triple captaincy. I would consider it this week on one of Haaland or Harry Kane. If you want an outside pick out of those 2, then maybe Riyad Mahrez or De Bruyne would be the next in line, but I wouldn't really go for anyone else. And honestly, I would just go for Haaland or Harry Kane, and it's completely up to you. I'm actually genuinely considering the Harry Kane captaincy, and I'll talk more about this in the team selection video and also other videos that are coming up on this channel. Now, the big doubt would be Ivan Toney. Not only is he an injury doubt, but he also has the risk of suspension. We've got the hearing, and we should find out more over the next week or so. If there is a punishment and Toney is suspended for the long term, then what you could do is go for a like-for-like replacement, such as Mbeumo, who also faces Bournemouth, of course. And if not, you could restructure your squad in such a way. Maybe go for a triple up in Man City offensively by dropping Akanji, also downgrading Toney to a cheaper striker, and also go for Mahrez in for one of those cheaper midfielders like Rashford or Jensen. So it's completely up to you, and that's one way you could go about it. But if not, if Toney is fully available, he's fit, and he has no suspension, I would definitely go for him, and he's a great long-term option. If you're looking for a Mitrovic replacement, then look no further. I think Toney is the one. You just have to hope there is no suspension and that he's fully fit. And those fixtures are absolutely fantastic. Toney is one of 3 forwards to have scored 100 points or more. Only Harry Kane and Haaland have scored more points than him. He has been absolutely terrific this season. He's the best penalty taker in the country as well. There's a lot to like. So let's wait and see what the news is on 2 fronts for Ivan Toney, who is, of course, the biggest out in this team. I'm a bit more confident of Kulusevski. I think he'll be absolutely fine for Game Week 20. Ivan Toney, though, who knows what will happen with him at this point. So now let's jump to FPL.team. I would highly recommend that website. You can visualize your squad in future game weeks, and it allows you to plan extensively. And we're going to show you the lineups and also the captaincy, in my opinion. This video may become out of date by the time we get to the FA Cup games, and that could also influence what happens in Game Week 20. But as things stand, I firmly believe this is the best free hit team, and this will also help you with your transfer plans for those of you that aren't playing the free hit, such as myself, and it just gives you an insight into which players could do the best job in this double game week. So Raya would be in goal here with Ward on the bench. The backline would look very solid with a double up in Newcastle defensively with Botman and Trippier, and we've also gone for a Kanji and Ivan Perisic. The midfield would only be free, which does look a bit strange, but De Bruyne, Kulusevski and Almiron should get the job done, and not to mention the front three. If Ivan Toney is fully fit and he also has no suspension, he is one of the very best options in the game for Game Week 20, not to mention Harry Kane or Haaland. The bench would be Rashford, Jensen and Bueno. I think benching Rashford would make me a bit uneasy, and you might not be able to afford this team like I said earlier. There are a few things you could do, such as downgrading Jensen to a cheaper midfielder. You don't need that much squad depth, but I'm just trying to highlight the best possible options at different price points. Now, in terms of the captaincy, I've briefly talked about this earlier. I think Haaland is the best on paper. He is one of the very best FPL options in history by the way he's going, but I might go for Harry Kane here because of his record against Arsenal in recent derbies. I think Haaland might struggle or blank in one of those two games foreseeably, but I could see Harry Kane scoring in both games. Of course, look, it's all hypothetical. Haaland has been the best option this season, the best striker, and definitely a shout for the player of the season. And Harry Kane has been slowly but surely getting back to his best. That performance against Palace would have turned a lot of heads, and maybe that could play a part in our thinking. But I always had the plan of potentially captaining Harry Kane myself in my team selection, and that's why I brought him in Game Week 17. He's returned 3 times for me in 3 game weeks. There's not much more you can ask for, really. So I think it's a really close call, actually, between Harry Kane and Haaland. Most of you would opt for Haaland, and that's completely understandable, and I think the vast majority of all FPL managers will go for him, but I think Harry Kane is a viable alternative, especially if you want to keep pushing and be very aggressive with your captaincy decisions and also go different and not just follow the template all the time. So let me know your thoughts. Would you seriously consider Harry Kane over Haaland, or would you just buy him in and have him as your vice, and Haaland will always be your captain no matter what? Let me know your thoughts. I'd be greatly interested, and thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes. Let's also push on towards 20,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check out our Patreon website, patreon.com/DylanRCM, and you can also become a channel member. All the links on the description below. The same goes to the Discord server and the FPL League, so be sure to check all of that out, and there'll be more videos coming up like the best wildcard team, the team selection, reaction stream, and deadline stream, amongst other videos coming your way. Use Your Fantasy will be back very soon, and I wish you all the best of luck for this FPL season, and I hope you have a great year, and I'll see you next time.